Hi, I'm Lavoie. Welcome to the King of Kings. We are going to be continuing on our study of this piece of artwork. This is remember this is going to be about his story, Jesus's kingdom, looking through all the ages of kings throughout history. So we're going to be leaving out a lot of detail, and we're just going to be looking at this with broad strokes. And this is the AD portion, Anno Domini, or as I like to call it, after death. So after Jesus' death, the Roman kingdom was doomed. We learned that the Roman kingdom was basically the best of the Greeks. So they adopted all the Greek gods into their own kingdom. And these Greek gods became Roman gods, and they changed their names. And in a very short time, Rome was starting to be taken over by Christians. And as each Roman citizen became a Christian citizen, and in fact, these Christian Romans were actually better Romans. They paid their taxes. They weren't criminals, or their behavior was very good. There's lots of really great stories of how they contributed more to Rome after they became Christians. One such story is how a Roman soldier rose to the ranks of becoming the captain of the Praetorian Guard. It was said that he showed good character and was trustworthiness. He had incredible amounts of courage and bravery. But when the emperor found out that he was a Christian, and only because he was a Christian, he was put to death in front of all his men. These men, a lot of them were converted to Christianity. So Rome was doomed, but for the Roman emperors, they were usually corrupt. Their time of ruling was quite short. If you became a Roman emperor, you would probably have an assassination attached to your seat of office. Nobody dies of natural causes. These Caesars are murdered, and everybody's power hungry. So underneath this, Christianity's bubbling up, and Christianity basically takes over this kingdom. And so it goes from the Roman Empire to the Holy Roman Empire, or the Holy Roman Kingdom. And it's split into two. You have one side, which is mostly Catholicism, and that's the West. You have the Byzantine Empire, which is of the East. And then the next kingdom comes along, and this is the Islamic kingdom. And they set up a caliphate kingdom. So a caliphate is basically a king that is, he's like a high priest. He's a moral teacher. He's usually a bloodline to Muhammad. And the caliphate kingdom is now stretching across Europe, especially Eastern Europe. It's all over Eastern Europe. And so the Byzantines have to deal with these caliphate kingdoms. Okay, so meanwhile in the West, in the Holy Roman Empire, the invading Islamic kingdom came in through Spain. And so eventually the kings of Europe were able to get rid of the Islamic invaders. And one of the key people behind it would have been Charlemagne's great grandfather. His name would have been Charles Mandel, or Charles the Hammer, and his I believe it's his son, or his son's son, becomes Pippin the Short, and Pippin the Short, as you all know, is Charlemagne's father. So when Charlemagne comes into power, at his coronation of becoming the king, this is a very key moment in European kings, the AD kings. Charlemagne is about to become the king, and he kneels down in front of the altar, and just as they're about to announce him the king under God, standing next to him would have been Pope Leo III, and Pope Leo III snatches a crown, and this is a special crown that was made specifically for King Charlemagne for his coronation, and snatches this crown and places it upon Charlemagne's head. And he declares, Pope Leo declares, that King Charlemagne is a king under the authority of the church. And this gave legitimacy to all the popes afterwards. Every pope to come after Pope Leo would become the authority over the crowns of Europe. So all the kings and queens in Europe would be subjected to the powers of the Pope. It was said that Charlemagne, this always bothered him when this happened. And we're going to find out later what ends up happening to the popes and their authority over these kings. But before that, let's go back to the east. With the eastern kings, the Byzantine kingdoms, they end up becoming in conflict with the Islamic kingdoms, and it's all over Jerusalem. And this is going to lead us to our next age of kingdoms, and it would be the Crusade kingdoms. And what we're going to find with the Crusade kingdoms is it went back and forth for hundreds of years, and it would kind of go like the Islamic kingdoms would win, and up would go the Islamic kingdom flag, and then the European kings would win, and up would go the European kingdom flags, and so the flag would kind of go up and down, kind of like a Bugs Bunny TV show. But our next kingdom that comes along is the Mongol Empire, the Mongol kingdom. We have the steppe people, and they become this vast, incredible kingdom. And they move quickly under the rule of Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan is the ruler of the steppe people, and the Mongols take over. They get into Baghdad, and it's called the sacking of Baghdad, and they basically destroy the Caliphate empire that's there. In fact, it's so badly devastated that is what ends the Crusades. And there's even at some point that the Christians make an alliance with the Muslims to help them stand against the Mongols. The Mongols they play a pretty important role in the King of Kings. At some point, Marco Polo's whole mission to go to China had to do with the Mongol Kublai Khan. He wanted Christian missionaries brought to him. He wanted to hear the gospel. The whole journey of Christopher Columbus, you find out that there is this stuff in Christopher Columbus's journal about bringing the gospel to the great Khan. So the Crusades kind of come to an end. Europe starts to have internal conflict, and part of that has to do with the popes and the Protestant Reformation. And so as the Protestant Reformation arises, the European kings have a new problem on their hand. And we're going to have a whole story on Henry VIII. Henry VIII plays an enormous role in this. And this leads the Protestants to feel persecuted by the Holy Roman Empire, and in fact, things start to change, and we're going to get into a lot more detail about this. But I'm going to sum it up really quick here with the Protestant kingdoms, as I'm going to call them. So they leave Europe. And what they're leaving is the European kings. And they go to the New World, and they start democracy in the New World, which is what, the birth of America. And America is founded on people of faith, and it's founded on this group of pilgrims that come over. And a wave after wave of Protestant or persecution people start to make their way to the New World. By the end of this story, the European kings will all be destroyed, and they'll become democratic countries. And so we'll call this the democratic kingdoms, because this is sort of the last kingdom that you're going to see on planet Earth is the democratic kingdom. And then there'll be a one world order, and everything's going to change. But before we get into any of that kind of stuff, that's kind of futuristic prophecy. We, listening to this story, are of democratic thinking, so we don't even think like the way the people did in the past who were under the rule of kings. But we are going to go into the purpose of kings, and why the world felt a need to have kings. I remember hearing that the early church was at one time where they had all things in common, it says in the Bible, in the book of Acts. And the person said, well, if they had all things in common, then they're communists. And they sold all their possessions, they had all things in common. I don't think we're communists, but what kind of kingdom do you think Jesus' kingdom is? So please leave a comment, sharing what you think that kingdom is, because there's a kingdom, nevertheless, and He's your king. And we don't have a choice in voting who our king's going to be. But I'd be interested in knowing what you think it is. And I'll tell you what I think in the next episode. And I'm hoping to get into the next episode explaining the purpose of why we have kings and or had them in the past, and why this was an important thing of human history, is to have kings and kingdoms. So join us in the next video or the next YouTube, and hopefully we'll get into a lot more detail. I'm Lavoie. Thanks again.